Hey, everybody, let's learn about Frederick Douglass, one of my favorite Americans. So, he was born into slavery in Maryland in 1818. And at a very young age, he was actually taught the alphabet by his enslaver's wife. And she was told eventually to stop doing that. But the foundation had already been laid. He learned to read, he learned to write in secret. He would actually read other people's writings. And he also became a very, very good speaker, or an old school word for that is orator. Um, Later on, while he was still enslaved, he actually beat up his overseer, which I think is a fascinating story. And then he's going to escape slavery eventually by disguising himself as a sailor and taking a train to New York. In New York, he's going to speak a little bit, and then he's going to eventually be discovered or heard about by an individual by the name of William Lloyd Garrison, who had a anti-slavery paper called The Liberator, and they're going to join the American Anti-Slavery Society. They were abolitionists. They were civil rights activists that were pushing for the end of slavery. So they would travel the country and speak to people. And what made Frederick Douglass so powerful is that everything he was saying was a firsthand account. He could firsthand tell everybody the horrors and the terribleness of slavery. And it was very powerful. And it convinced people. He also wrote his own autobiography. He became so famous that he actually had to leave the country because people were afraid that he was going to be captured and brought back into slavery. So he left the country. He's going to eventually come back and be able to pay for his freedom. And then he's going to eventually be able to be an advisor for the president. So he goes from being enslaved all the way to getting to the White House and being an advisor for President Abraham Lincoln. Pretty amazing. And eventually his works and his words and his ability to convince was so good that by 1865, eventually the 13th Amendment was passed, which made involuntary servitude illegal. One other interesting fact about Frederick Douglass is there's tons of photos of him. So back in the day, during the times of slavery, black men and women were depicted very negatively through images. So he took tons of photos of himself, just showing how good he looked, which I think's a pretty amazing story on top of everything else I just said. So that's all about Frederick Douglass. Look him up. Look up his photos and look up his story. There's a lot more to what I just said. So I hope that you found that interesting and stay curious.